Hey everyone, it's Synth Designer back again with another video. Today I wanted to chat about how do you pick the right sounds and how do you know you're picking the right sounds for your music. Now I've had a bunch of questions most recently asking like, how do you know you're picking the right sounds? How do you choose the right sounds? What are some of the techniques you use to choose these sounds? So I kind of want to break things down and I'm going to show you a bunch of examples of the types of sounds that I choose in different genres to kind of give you an idea of how you can pick the right sounds for your own music. And this should apply to all genres across electronic music, no matter what you're working on. I really feel like choosing the right sounds really gets you a head start on mixing. I feel like choosing the right sounds is about 50% of what mixing entails. If you choose the wrong sounds, you're going to be trying to play with different effects. You're going to be using so many filters, etc. And you're just going to be wasting a lot of time. Choosing the right sounds from the outset is really a fundamental aspect of all electronic music. So I've really broken things down into what I would call 5 categories for choosing the right sounds. Now, this is not an exhaustive list, but I feel like these 5 categories, when you think about them, you're going to be able to choose better sounds for your own music. Number 1, the most important category for choosing the right sound is choosing the sound with the right atmosphere and style to suit your sound or your song. Number 2, looking at the harmonic content and the frequency range where that sound falls in. So, for example, if you have a bass already, you tend not to want to have anything too bassy, right? Because those two things clash. Same with if you have a very kind of like high frequency sound out there that's taking up that end of the spectrum, then you're kind of want to limit how much of the highs you're going to be using. Now, there's obviously lots of exceptions, but that's just the second one to consider. The third is ADSR. How does your note length work with the other sounds that you have? Number 4 is the width. So is it up the middle, kind of really wide? Does it have a lot of reverb, etc.? And then the 5th is the loudness. So the loudness is the easiest because it could be adjusted the easiest. But those are the 5 categories I think about when choosing the right sounds. Now, I want to get into very practical examples here and show you what I mean. So let's start with this one. This is kind of like a chill wave track that I was working on. This is actually from another tutorial, but I wanted to show you kind of this lead here, this pattern 6, and the kind of ideas that I have when choosing the right sound. So let's just play this little section here. Okay, so you could hear that this track is kind of like a lo-fi, chill wave type of track, and that lead fits in well. Now, as you can see, when I was playing that, I felt like it wasn't quite loud enough, and that's something you can adjust quite easily. So that was our number 5 point there. But what about the most fundamental part? Does it fit the overall style of it? In my opinion, it really does. And let's just take a look at how it's developed. So if we play it here, so it's got that kind of lo-fi sound to it already, and we created that through a bunch of effects here. So I have a bunch of distortion through Isotope Trash, Chow Tate Model, and then all these other effects here. If I were to take them all off, very boring, right? It's kind of a mix of a saw wave and a sine wave here. And you can see here the cutoff is pretty low. Now, again, here's part of the harmonic content. I don't want super, super high, bright lead here because if I were to open up this cutoff, it's not going to be very well suited for a lo-fi kind of chill song. The ADSR, it's a lead sound, so it's really kind of on its own. That kind of comes into play more in other terms when you're trying to match and layer different sounds. In this case, I'm not really trying to layer this. But as you can hear, it's very basic when it comes to ADSR. It's a little sustained there, as you can hear. But the main important thing here is this cutoff here. So if I were to turn it way up, let's play without all these effects and see how it sounds. In my opinion, it's kind of working, but not as much, right? It's losing a lot of that kind of vintage sound, which is what we try to produce here with these effects. So number one, we cut off a bunch of those highs and of course the lows. That's part of our harmonic content again. We have a lead here, so we don't want it taking up bass frequency. If it was taking up bass frequency, well, then it's clashing and you're really losing power with the bass. The isotope trash here is really meant to just provide distortion. So if I were to play it on its own here, the compression also adds a little bit of like forward content, so it's right up front in the mix. As you can see, it's not really mixed yet. It's just kind of on its own. This was just the beginning of project, but this is part of it. This Chow tape model adds that kind of fluttery sound as well. Then I'm taking away some of those lows again. Ozone Imager here is adding just a little bit of stereo enhancement here just because I want it straight up the middle, and that was again part of our 5 points with the width because I wanted taking up a little bit more space, not too much because I had other parts, right? And then the loudness, of course, is what we can adjust as we go. So playing it back into context. So that's just one example of how you can pick the right sounds. Think about all those 5 points that I mentioned and think about, first and foremost, does this sound fit my current project? Then afterwards, you're thinking about the harmonic content, where to cut off some frequencies, the ADSR, the width, and the loudness. In this next example, I wanted to kind of pick a different new layer that I hadn't thought of yet. In this case, I have these kind of plucky chords to start the song. So as you can hear, we have two little layers there, and in this case, I had two complementary plucks, right? I had the first pluck that was kind of the established, nice, bigger chords, thicker chords. And then I added these other plucks here just based on single note plucks. If I added a whole other pluck that mimicked those chords, then it would start getting really thick and it would start clashing. In this case, I just took the root notes and added it an octave higher and it stands out. And that is another part of our 5 points where you're thinking about the frequency range there. Of course, the style matches because it's just very basic plucks. They're not clashing. They're not like harsh or anything. So we got that first point out of the way. The harmonic content matches really well because of the fact that we're not making them clash in terms of like the frequency range, right? The ADSR in this case, let's just take a look. See if this is as simple as it gets. It's just a basic saw wave if I were to play the pattern. But thinking about the ADSR, what if we were to play it from that section and we were to choose a different ADSR here, play around with it? How would it affect the complementary sound of it? You see, it's no longer making any sense, right? Because you're just filling it with so much space. That's not what we want with this sound. This is a bare kind of saw wave here, and it's just clogging up the sound now. So you can hear it's filling out the space in the same way that those plucks are, which is why those pluck chords, which is why this works really well. And of course, the width here is complementing again because those first pluck chords wide, this is straight up the middle. So they're not clashing again. So that is a very basic example of how you can kind of complement different pluck chords as well. But let's say we want to fill out some more space here. We have these plucky sounds. So we were trying to change the ADSR here to kind of fill in more space. It wasn't working because it's a very basic kind of saw wave, really kind of just harsh. But let's say we wanted to add a drone here to start. So we're going to create a new pattern here. Pattern 18. We're going to open up a new instance of Serum. And let's go and check out pattern 1 here. So let's just assume it's in D sharp. So we're going to go back to pattern 18. We are going to just put in a D sharp here that lasts, say, 4 bars. And we're going to put it in here, and then we're just going to copy it. Just to make sure we have this drone going here throughout. And we're going to pick a sound as well. And I want a drone here. And the reason why drones and pluck chords work well is because drones are kind of like airy, whereas pluck chords are really kind of have that harsh transience to them. They're really upfront, whereas drones are kind of towards the back, right? So we're going to set this on its own mixer channel here. And we're going to pick a sound of a drone. So I have some drones set up here. Let's just try some out. We'll quiet it down here, of course, remembering that loudness is part of how to choose a sound. So let's play it together. What do we think of that? Maybe we'll turn this up just to give it more context. Let's pick a different sound maybe. This is a case where it's really too harsh, right? It kind of works, but it's taking up a lot of space here. Let's go back to this choir cave. It's just adding a little bit of kind of depth to the sound without getting in the way of those pluck chords. Make it even bigger sounding. And we'll cut off some of these lows as well, just to make it lighter. So there you have it. There's just an easy way of kind of creating a complementary sound with a drone there. And how do we pick that? Well, we thought about our 5 points there. The atmosphere has to match. So the atmosphere of this song is just kind of building, right? It's building in this section with these pluck chords. So we can't have anything too harsh, right? If we had something with a super harsh frequency, let's just pick something that doesn't work, and maybe this will provide a little bit more context. So this choir cave here, let's pick kind of this sound here. See how that would work. As you can imagine, I don't think this is going to work great. Couldn't think of a worse sound. Why? Well, number one, this atmosphere doesn't work. This is meant to be kind of like a horror atmospheric sound that doesn't necessarily work well with kind of EDM in any sense. Maybe some sort of crazy dubstep, but really this is meant to be an atmosphere sound. And the atmosphere doesn't work here because we want something very light. Number two, the points that we were talking about, the harmonic content and the frequency range. Well, the harmonic content of this is, let's just take a look at it, how it comes up on parametric EQ. It's not super rich. It's got a sine wave and this kind of pulse wave, but it's meant to be kind of lighter and it's not super rich like a saw wave would produce. So that works as well. We could potentially think about moving it up an octave and seeing how that works. That would be very easy to test out. So let's just play it. There's that sound, and then let's see it up an octave. That works too. I would prefer this. That higher frequency, that kind of promotes a little bit more energy in my opinion. And I want it really, really kind of mellow to start. Number three, the ADSR. In this specific case, it's really meant to complement those pluck chords. So we want a totally sustained note. As you saw with those other plucks that we had, once we started a completely sustained note, just with a saw wave, it really started to clash because it didn't fit. In this situation, we have a very light sound that can fill in the space without clashing with those pluck chords. The width, this is a big sound because it has a lot of reverb. In this case, I don't think it's clashing too much with those pluck chords because yes, those pluck chords are bigger, but this is really truly meant to be kind of in the background with that reverb. And the loudness, of course, we can change up a bit if we want, but as you can hear, it's really meant to be just kind of this atmosphere that you're not even thinking about. So those are a few examples there of how I think about choosing the right sounds in different contexts. Now, there's so many different ways you can choose sounds, but I think based on my 5 tips of atmosphere / style, harmonic content, frequency range, ADSR, width, and loudness, if you think about those 5 points every time you're picking a sound, then I think that will help you choose better sounds if you're struggling with that. Let me know down in the comments how you choose your sounds, what is working for you, what doesn't work for you. I'd really like to know kind of what I could do to help you guys choose better sounds, because I feel like a lot of people kind of struggle with that, where it's not that complicated and you don't have to overthink things. And saying just use your ears is also not a very good tip, because you have to train your ears to pick the right sounds. And I feel like those 5 tips there, or those 5 points, should help you start picking better sounds. And in turn, that will really help you with your mixing and your overall sound design and arrangement. So let me know if you like this video, what else you want to see in terms of sound design or choices, and I'll see you all next time.